Northbridge Mall sparkled under a web of white Christmas lights, every balcony rail lined with glowing strands that blinked in time with music flooding the air. Choir voices floated from hidden speakers' bells, chimed from a giant digital display, and the food court roared with the layered noise of trays clattering, kids whining, and families laughing over greasy paper plates. Claire Hayes heard none of it. From her small table near the glass railing, the world reached her in flashes of color and motion instead of sound. A toddler in a red sweater threw a French fry and shrieked with delight. A group of teenagers in ugly Christmas sweaters leaned together, shoulders shaking, mouths open in silent laughter. A little boy tugged at his mother's coat, pointing at the towering tree in the atrium, its ornaments the size of his head. To Claire, it all looked like a movie with the volume turned all the way down. She sat still, hands folded in her lap, the strap of her leather bag cutting a neat diagonal across her cream-knit dress. Her coat lay open over the back of the chair, pale blue wool catching the light from the overhead fixtures. She had picked the outfit carefully that afternoon, holding each piece up to the mirror and imagining how her mother might react, how her sister might appraise her from head to toe. Elegant, but not trying too hard. That had been the goal. Her phone lay face up on the table, a small rectangle of light in the middle of a cheap laminate surface. The last message on the screen glowed accusingly. "We'll be there by 6. Don't be late, Mom." The digital clock above the burger place read 7:12. Claire's gaze slid from the burger place to the entrance of the food court, tracing the flow of people coming and going. Coats, scarves, shopping bags, all forming a constant current. Every few seconds she checked again, like she might have missed them in the crowd, like they could appear at any moment, coats unbuttoned, cheeks flushed from the cold. She wiped under one eye with her knuckle and pretended it was just something in her lashes. The skin there already felt raw from the number of times she had done that in the last hour. A family at the next table erupted into laughter. At least she assumed they did. The father's head dropped back. The mother covered her mouth. The teenage daughter rolled her eyes, then smiled in spite of herself. Claire watched their faces, the way their expressions lifted and fell, with the rhythm of a conversation she would never hear. Her brain tried to fill in the gaps, to imagine the punchline. It was an old habit she could not quite let go. Her thumb hovered over the screen of her phone. She opened the messaging app. The chat thread with her mother glared back long and uneven. A string of blue bubbles from Claire, short gray replies scattered through like breadcrumbs. "Are we still on for tonight? Do you want me to bring dessert? Should I dress up or is it casual?" Then her mother's answer from that morning, brisk and almost warm if she squinted hard enough. "Of course, it's Christmas Eve, family dinner, 6 p.m., be on time." No follow-up, no smiley face, no heart. Claire scrolled higher and saw the ghosts of other holidays. Last Thanksgiving, a cousin's birthday, her father's retirement party, events she had prepared for, outfits planned, dishes cooked only to receive the same kind of message at the last possible moment. Something came up. "We will celebrate another time. You know how things are." The phone buzzed in her hand. A new message popped onto the screen. "Family emergency, we can't make it tonight. We'll talk after the holidays. Mom." 3 lines. No. Sorry, no explanation. Her thumb rested on the glass just below the words. She could feel her pulse in the pad of her finger, a dull, insistent thud against cold technology. She opened a new message and stared at the empty text box. Her fingers moved. "Are you okay?" She deleted it. "What happened?" Deleted. "I came all the way here." Deleted. "I got dressed up for you." Deleted. In the end, she typed nothing. The blank space stared back as if even her phone knew how pointless it was to try. Claire locked the screen and flipped the device over face down, as if that might flip the feeling in her chest too. It did not. She swallowed and lifted her gaze to the atrium. The mall's main Christmas tree towered up 3 stories, a giant cone of lights and tinsel, its star just visible above the second floor. Children lined up with their parents near the Santa throne, a red velvet armchair surrounded by wrapped boxes and faux snow. A photographer waved people into place, her mouth moving quickly, ponytail swaying as she gave instructions. Claire could not hear the directions, but she knew the pattern by heart. "Sit here, hands there. Look at me, say cheese." She had been good at lip reading for years. At 14, when the infections in her ears had finally burned through the last of her hearing, a speech therapist had taught her the basics. After that, she had learned more from necessity than any formal training. Watching movies without captions, standing in front of bathroom mirrors, mimicking the shapes of other people's mouths until the words made sense. It worked fine as long as people faced her, as long as they spoke clearly, as long as the lighting was decent, as long as she was not tired or overwhelmed or on the verge of tears. Her vision blurred, and the tree turned into a smear of green and gold. She blinked hard until it sharpened again. Her fingers twisted the edge of the paper napkin beside her empty drink cup. The thin paper tore under the pressure, piling up in small white curls near her knuckles. Without thinking, she let go and curled her hands into fists under the table, pressing her nails into her palms until the sting grounded her. Across from her, the glass railing showed a reflection of the food court, a ghostly overlay of moving shapes and blinking lights. Her own face floated among them, pale and a little washed out, framed by light brown hair that fell in soft waves to her shoulders. To anyone else, she probably looked fine. A woman waiting for someone. A woman between stores catching her breath. No one looking at her reflection would guess that her ears might as well be stone. She shifted in her chair and tugged at the strap of her bag. The leather creaked softly, a sound she could no longer hear but still imagined. She slid the zipper open and felt around inside until her fingers brushed against thick cardstock. The envelope. She pulled it out and laid it on the table, smoothing it with her palm. It was a deep red, the good kind of stationery you bought in a real paper store, not at the supermarket. Her name was written on the front in her own careful cursive. Inside, tucked neatly behind a folded Christmas card, she had hand-lettered was a printout on glossy paper. Black text and official logo, her name printed in bold. First place Global Children's Illustration Prize, awarded to Claire Hayes. Winning entry, Winter Stories. She had read those lines so often she could see them with her eyes closed. The plan had been simple. Hand the card to her mother at dinner. Wait for everyone to sit for the plates to be passed around for the conversation to quiet. Then slide the envelope across the table and watch their faces shift from polite distraction to surprise, then pride. Maybe her father's eyes would soften the way they used to when she was small and brought home drawings to stick on the fridge. Maybe her mother would touch her hand, squeeze it, tell her that she had always known Claire would do something special. Maybe Madison would stop looking at her like a fragile problem that kept refusing to be solved. That had been the scene in her head as she stood in front of her closet hours ago, trying on outfits. That had been the reason she had curled her hair, the reason she had put on mascara, even though she hated the way it made her lashes feel heavy. Now the envelope sat on a plastic table in a mall food court under fluorescent lights that flattened everything. Claire opened it with stiff fingers and slid the certificate out just enough for the official seal to catch the light. Then she pushed it back in and returned the envelope to her bag. What was the point of a celebration if there was no one to see it? She lifted her head again, scanning the flow of people in a slow, resigned rhythm. Families, couples, groups of friends. Their mouths moved sentences rising and falling in patterns she could no longer follow, all blending into the same endless murmur she could not hear. In a corner of her vision near the far side of the food court, a small figure climbed onto a chair to peer over the crowd. A little girl in a puffy purple coat, blonde ponytail bouncing as she pointed at something Claire could not see. Behind her, a tall man in a dark jacket turned to follow the direction of her hand. Claire's eyes drifted past them without much interest and returned to the glowing tree. She sat up a little straighter, smoothed her dress over her knees, and tried to arrange her face into something calm. If anyone looked her way, she wanted to look like a woman who was simply waiting, not a woman who had been quietly left behind. From where Lily Cole sat, the giant Christmas tree looked like it touched the ceiling. She tipped her head back until her ponytail brushed her shoulders, following the line of lights as they spiraled up into the rafters. Tiny reflections shivered on the surface of her hot chocolate marshmallows, melting into a sticky foam. She took a sip, burned her tongue, and sucked in a sharp breath. Her dad did not look up. He sat across from her at their table. Shoulders slumped, the sleeves of his work jacket smudged with faint gray streaks that never quite washed out. An open receipt lay in front of him, beside an empty burger wrapper. He was squinting at some numbers, lips moving, as he added them quietly. "Dad," she said. He hummed in response, a sound that meant he heard her, but his brain was still stuck on something else. His dark brows pinched together, thumb rubbing a small circle near the total. The fluorescent lights above picked out a few stray silver hairs near his temple. "Dad," she tried again. He lifted his eyes halfway, still not fully present. Lily followed his gaze and realized he was not looking at her at all. He was looking past her toward the open space by the railing. She twisted in her seat. The woman was still there. The one Lily had noticed a few minutes earlier, before she had gotten distracted by the size of her fries. Sitting alone at a table with nothing but a cup and a phone in front of her. Cream dress, blue coat hair like honey in the mall lights. The woman sat very straight. Her hands were hidden in her lap. From this distance, Lily could not see all the details of her face, but she saw enough. The shiny red around the eyes. The two even ways she kept her mouth, like she was holding something in. Lily had seen that look before. On kids at school, when their parents forgot to pick them up on time. On her dad sometimes, when he thought she was asleep. Something tugged in her chest. She turned back to Evan and found him watching the woman too. "Is she still there?" Lily asked. Her dad blinked, returning to the table, as if he had been somewhere else. "Yeah," he said, "still there." Lily drummed her fingers against her paper cup. The cardboard felt soft and warm. She looked sad. Evan folded the receipt and slid it into his wallet. He glanced at the tray at the half-eaten fries in front of Lily, then at the woman again. "Lots of people look sad this time of year," he said. His voice tried to sound casual, but Lily had known him for 7 years and could hear the strain underneath. The noise of the mall swelled around them, a jumble of songs and announcements and overlapping conversations. Somewhere behind them, a kid started crying. A blender whirred at the smoothie place. A cashier called out an order number. Lily's attention kept snapping back to the woman. "She is alone," Lily said. "Everyone else has someone. She has no one." Evan sighed softly. He rubbed his thumb over a faint scar near his knuckle, the way he always did when he was thinking hard. The lines at the corners of his eyes seemed deeper under the harsh lights. "Maybe someone is just late," he said. "She keeps looking at the door," Lily replied. "She keeps pretending she is not looking, but she is." Evan glanced back at the woman. He noticed the way her gaze ticked toward the entrance every minute or so, quick and hopeful, then dropped again. He noted the phone turned face down on the table. The way she started to reach for it stopped and curled her fingers away. He knew that kind of waiting, time stretching, every second loud. He tore a napkin in half and smoothed it with his palm as if he could flatten the feeling. Lily leaned in. "I think she cannot hear," she whispered. That pulled his eyes fully to her. "What makes you say that?" Lily shrugged one shoulder, proud of her observation. Her eyes. She looks at people's mouths a lot, not their eyes. And she did not turn around when that baby was screaming before. Even I turned around. Now that he thought about it, Lily was right. There had been a toddler at the table behind the woman earlier, red-faced and wailing. The woman had not flinched. No little wince, no annoyed glance over her shoulder. She had kept staring straight ahead like she did not know a sound that loud was happening so close. Evan's chest tightened. He had worked at the Eastside Community Center for a few months back, before Lily was born. The pay had been bad, and the hours worse, but it had been a job. In the break room there, between fixing old computers and cleaning out dusty wiring closets, he had met Miguel. Miguel had been deaf since childhood. He was stocky and calm, with quick hands and a smile that seemed to glow. At first, they had just nodded at each other in passing, Evan talking at him too fast, and Miguel pointing to his ears with an apologetic shrug. One slow afternoon, Miguel had pulled out a notebook and written, "You can learn to talk to me, you know." Evan had laughed and written back, "I barely pass Spanish." Miguel had grinned and then raised his hands. Simple shapes, clean movements. "Hello? My name is... How are you? Thank you." They had spent their lunch breaks like that for weeks. Hands moving. Evan stumbling through the signs, Miguel correcting him with patient taps and a shake of his head. Voice was optional. The hands did most of the work. Sometimes they just sat in companionable silence, trading jokes, with nothing but eyebrows and fingers. It had been years since Evan used any of it for real. The signs had gone from sharp to blurry in his memory, worn down by time, and the grind of daily bills and oil changes and school forms. Now watching the woman at the table, he felt those old shapes itch under his skin. Like Mr. Jackson Lilly said, in the resource room, he cannot hear either. He uses his hands. You said it is called sign language. American Sign Language, Evan said. Lily nodded quickly. You showed me some in the car that one time, when we were stuck in traffic. He remembered. It had been last summer on the freeway, heat shimmering off the hood. Lily had been cranky. He had tapped the steering wheel and signed hello in the air to make her laugh. She had demanded more. A few simple words clumsy in the rearview mirror. You said everyone deserves to be heard, she reminded him. He had said that. It sounded like something he would say, half teasing, half serious. It had felt true enough to stick. Now Lily looked at him, with those steady blue eyes that always seemed older than 7 milkshake ring on her upper lip hair, escaping its ponytail. She tipped her chin toward the woman. Can we talk to her? She asked, with our hands. So, she is not alone. Evan glanced at his watch out of habit, then at the shopping bag by his feet, a thrift store coat for Lily, a puzzle he had picked up secondhand, a box of cocoa packets, small things, but they had required careful math. That math had been on the receipt he had just put away, and it was still ticking in the back of his mind. They were supposed to head home soon. The roads would gloss over with ice once the temperature dropped. He would have to scrape the windshield again. All of that sat on one side of the scale. On the other side was a woman sitting alone in a bright, noisy mall who did not seem to know that anyone cared she was there. He watched as a boy ran past her table, bumped the edge with his hip, and kept going without apology. Her cup wobbled. She steadied it automatically and gave a tight smile to no one. Lily shifted, impatience vibrating through her small body. She touched his wrist with sticky fingers. "Dad," she said quietly, "it is Christmas Eve." Her voice had that particular quality he recognized. The mixture of softness and insistence that meant she was not just asking because she was curious. She was asking because something in her had already decided what the right thing was. She just needed him to come along. Evan blew out a slow breath. He could feel the dry heat of the mall on his cheeks, the faint ache in his lower back from a full day bent over car engines. He could also feel the way his heart clenched when he looked at the woman's rigid shoulders and the way she kept her hands hidden, like she did not trust them not to shake. He rubbed his palms on his jeans and held them up, fingers spread. "Do you remember any of the signs?" he asked Lily. Her face lit up. She set her cup down so fast cocoa sloshed over the rim. "Hello," she said, forming the sign with exaggerated care. "My name is Lily." The movements were a little off, but the intent was clear. "Not bad," he said. "We can fix it on the way." He pushed his chair back and stood. His knees popped softly. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair and shrugged it on, then bent to grab their shopping bag. Lily hopped down from her seat, wiped her hands on a napkin, and came around to his side. She slid her small hand into his without being asked. Her fingers were warm and sticky, anchoring him in the moment. "You really want to do this?" he asked. She nodded, ponytail bobbing. "You always tell me if we see someone who needs help, we do not just look away." He did not remember saying those exact words, but it sounded like him. He squeezed her hand gently. "All right," he said. They stepped away from their table and started across the food court, weaving between chairs and bags and drifting crowds heading toward the woman in the cream dress who sat alone by the glass. Claire saw them before she realized they were coming toward her. The man and the little girl stepped out from the stream of people, angling across the food court, in a line that led straight to her table. At first, she thought it was coincidence. Plenty of people cut through this section to get to the elevators. Then the man's eyes caught hers, steady and focused, and her spine went rigid. She straightened without meaning to. Her hand slid toward her phone fingers, brushing the edge as if it were some kind of shield. They did not look like security. The man wore a dark jacket over a faded sweatshirt, jeans, boots dusted with light salt marks. His hair was a little too long at the back, curls beginning to form at his neck, and there was an oil stain on one sleeve that had resisted soap. The girl at his side had a purple puffy coat that squeaked when she moved, and her blonde ponytail was coming loose strands sticking to her flushed cheeks. The girl said something, lips forming a question. The man answered without taking his eyes off Claire, his mouth moving slowly around his words. Claire's pulse picked up. She forced herself to breathe through her nose evenly, like the therapist had taught her years ago when crowds still made her dizzy. They stopped at the edge of her table. The man did not speak, not with his mouth. He raised his hands. Claire blinked. It took her half a second to understand that he was not gesturing randomly. His fingers moved in shapes she had not seen in a long time, deliberate and careful. "Are you okay?" The signs were a little stiff, like someone rediscovering an old muscle, but they were there. Her brain supplied the meaning even as surprise flooded her chest. She stared at him. His eyes were brown and steady with tiny lines at the corners from squinting into bright light or from too much smiling. She could not tell which. He repeated the signs slower this time. "Are you okay?" Her throat tightened. No one at the mall had looked at her twice all evening. People had bumped her, chairs stepped around her, glanced past her. She had grown so used to being invisible that the sudden direct attention felt unreal. She nodded before she could stop herself, a reflexive, polite response. Then her training caught up, and she lifted her own hands. "I am fine." She signed, her movements small and tight. He watched her fingers and gave a faint frown, the kind that said he understood the grammar, but did not believe the answer. Beside him, the little girl tugged his sleeve. "What did she say?" The girl asked, her mouth forming the words slowly enough that Claire could catch them. The man crouched slightly, so he was closer to the child's height, still keeping Claire in his line of sight. He spoke to the girl and exaggerated his mouth just enough that Claire could read it too. "She says she is fine," he said. "I do not think that is true." The girl nodded, serious in a way that made her look older than 7. Claire's heartbeat thudded in her ears out of habit, though she could not hear it. She told herself she did not owe them anything. They were strangers. She had survived plenty of lonely nights without help from anyone. Still, something in the way the man had chosen to speak with his hands instead of his mouth, in the way he had moved into her sight line instead of behind her shoulder, made it hard to retreat into the usual polite distance. The girl took a small breath like she was bracing herself, then stepped forward. She lifted her own hands, fingers a little stiff. "Hello," she signed. "My name is Lily." The signs were clumsy and out of order, but they were unmistakable. Heat pricked behind Claire's eyes. She swallowed down the sudden swell of emotion and forced her lips up into a smile, not the brittle kind she showed her family, but something softer. She answered slowly, making each shape clear. "Hello, Lily. My name is Claire. You sign Mao? Well, you sign very well." Lily's face lit up. She turned to her dad with obvious pride. "She said I sign very well," she announced. Claire watched the man's reaction. His shoulders relaxed a fraction, and for the first time his mouth curved into something like a smile. "She is being kind," he said. Then he looked back at Claire and lifted his hands again. "My name is Evan," he signed. "This is my daughter. Nice to meet you." He had to pause once to remember a shape, but he worked through it, and Claire's chest loosened a little more. "Nice to meet you," she replied. Up close she could see details she had not noticed at a distance. Small scars on his fingers, a faint fading mark near his jaw. The kind of wear that came from actual work, not gym sessions. He glanced at the empty chair across from her, and then at her face, asking without words. She nodded slightly, and he pulled the chair out, careful not to scrape it too loudly against the tile, even though he had to know she would not hear it. Lily dragged another chair over, legs squealing on the floor. The sound did not reach Claire, but the way other people's heads turned did. Lily winced, muttered a quick sorry that Claire caught from her lips, and then sat down, folding her hands on the table with exaggerated neatness. For a moment, they just sat there, the three of them in the middle of the food court chaos, an island of quiet Claire could actually touch. Evan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small spiral notebook and a pen. He scribbled a line and turned it toward her. "We did not mean to bother you. We can leave if you want." His handwriting was compact, a little slanted. Claire read the sentence twice, then shook her head. She picked up the pen, feeling the familiar weight between her fingers, and wrote beneath his words. "You are not bothering me. I was just waiting." She hesitated, then added, "They are not coming." Evan's eyes flickered to the word, they then back to her. He tapped the notebook gently, as if to ask permission to keep reading. She nodded. He wrote, "I am sorry. That is a hard kind of waiting." She stared at the line. Hard kind of waiting. It was not pity, just recognition. The difference mattered. Lily leaned forward, trying to read, but catching only the shape of a few words. "Is she okay?" she whispered. Evan signed back to both of them at once, a little awkwardly, but with clear intent. "She is sad. Her family did not come." Lily's face crumpled for a second, then smoothed out. She turned on her chair until she faced Claire fully. "We came," Lily said, making sure to open her mouth enough for Claire to see every word. "Now you are not by yourself." Claire's breath hitched. It was such a simple sentence. No big promises, just a small statement of fact, offered with all the conviction of a child who believed that showing up already made a difference. She set the pen down carefully. Her hands wanted to shake, so she folded them together, instead pressing her fingers tight to keep them still. Evan tapped the notebook again. "We are about to get dinner," he wrote, "then go home to decorate our tree. You could join us if you want. No pressure." He paused, then signed the last part as well, translating his own words into movement, so she would not miss a beat. "Come with us," his hand said. "Eat, tree, you are welcome." Her first instinct was to refuse. It was automatic, the same way she smiled and nodded when people made empty invitations they did not expect her to accept. She searched his face for signs of that, of politeness, of discomfort. She found none. He looked a little nervous, like he was not sure if he was overstepping, but there was no impatience in his eyes. Lily rested her elbows on the table, chin in her hands. "We have extra cookies," Lily said. "Dad burned some, but the others are good." Evan shot her a look. Lily grinned, unbothered. "We need help eating them," she added. Claire exhaled through her nose, a short puff that was almost a laugh. She glanced at her bag, at the place where the envelope rested inside. The future she had picture-framed around the dinner had already collapsed. This was something else entirely. She lifted her hands. "You do not even know me," she signed. Evan read her fingers, then nodded slowly. His mouth quirked in a half-smile. "That is true," he signed back. "My name is Evan. I fix cars. Lily is 7. She loves hot chocolate and glitter. Now you know a little." Lily nodded enthusiastically at the list. He added, "We know you are Claire. You draw. You have nice handwriting. Your family should have shown up." Then he shrugged, a little, not careless, just accepting. "Sometimes that is enough to invite someone to dinner," he signed. Something inside her chest shifted as if a knot had loosened a little. She glanced at the mall entrance again. No familiar faces, no sign of a rushed apology or a flurry of coats that said they had finally decided she was worth coming for. Her apartment waited somewhere across town. Small, clean, quiet in a way that did not comfort. Tonight it would be a box with walls too close and time too slow. Across from her, Lily watched her with wide blue eyes, fingers twitching like she was ready to sign more if needed. Evan sat steady as a tree, hands resting on the notebook, not pushing, just offering. Claire inhaled once, held it, then let it go. "Okay," she signed, "I will come." Lily let out a soft squeak of excitement and clapped her hands. Evan's shoulders dropped in visible relief. He picked up the pen again. "Thank you for trusting us," he wrote. Claire opened her mouth to say something, then remembered and lifted her hands instead. "Thank you for asking," she signed. The lights above them flickered. It was small at first, just a brief flutter of brightness. Claire glanced up on instinct. A second later, the overhead fixtures blinked again, longer this time, and the glow from the giant tree in the atrium wavered. She felt it more than saw it, a subtle shift in the space around her. The people at nearby tables paused mid-bite, mid-sentence. Heads tilted, bodies stilled. A wave of attention rolled up to the ceiling. Claire searched for clues in faces, jokes, annoyance, concern. The lights went out. For a heartbeat, the mall dropped into black, swallowing sonar in definition. Somewhere in the distance, someone gasped. Phones lit up like scattered stars on the floor. Emergency lights along the exits hummed to life, weak red and white halos cutting through the dark. The sounds that followed were lost to Claire, but the movement was not. All at once, the world around her surged. The movement came in a sudden rush. Chairs scraped. Someone bumped into her shoulder hard enough to jolt her forward. Claire grabbed the edge of the table, fingers digging into the cheap laminate. Her eyes darted from one glowing rectangle of phone light to another, trying to make sense of the shapes. People were talking. She could see their mouths opening, closing, forming words in the patchy glow. Some faces were amused, some annoyed, a few tight with unease. Somewhere a child cried, jaw stretched in a wail that she could see but not hear. Her body did what it always did when things shifted too fast. It inhaled, then forgot how to exhale. Breath caught high in her chest. The mall around her narrowed. The edges blurred. The faint red glow from the exit signs smeared across her vision. She could not hear the music stop. She could not hear any reassuring announcement. All she saw were bodies turning, mouths, moving arms, lifting to point at exits she could not see clearly yet. Her mind pulled up an old image in brutal clarity. Darkness thick as cloth, the smell of dust and old coats, her own breath hot against her hands. 14 pounding on the inside of a closet door, while thunder flickered outside the slats. The click of the lock before that, the quick laugh of a girl walking away. Madison had said it was a joke. Their mother had been annoyed at the mess when she finally opened the door, not at the terror in Claire's face. In the present, Claire's fingers trembled against the table. For a heartbeat, she stayed frozen, a rock in a river that had suddenly risen. A hand entered her field of vision. Palm up, fingers open, held steady between her and the chaos. First chaos. She followed the line of the wrist, the forearm to Evan's face. His features were lit from below by the weak glow of someone's phone shadows cutting across his cheekbones. His eyes were locked on hers, solid and clear. He lifted his other hand and signed in slow, deliberate movements. "Look at me." Her gaze tightened on his fingers. Focus narrowed to the shapes he made. "You are okay," he signed. "You are with us." He extended his hand again, closer now. "Hold on." Her lungs burned. She forced her fingers to loosen from the edge of the table and reached toward him. Her palm met his. His hand was warm and dry and strong around hers, fingers wrapping, not clamping. Lily appeared at his side, her small hand wrapping around two of Claire's fingers where they met the table. "We are here," Lily said, opening her mouth wide on each word. "We will go together." Claire nodded. Her throat still felt too tight for sound, but her body registered the contact. 2 hands, 2 points of anchor. Around them, the flow intensified. People were standing, grabbing bags, calling to each other. The emergency lights along the walls flickered, painting the space in dull red and white stripes. A mall employee in a polo shirt gestured broadly toward a side corridor, lips moving in what looked like practiced reassurance. Evan stood still, holding Claire's hand. He picked up his notebook with his free one and slid it into his jacket pocket. Lily clung to his other hand, clutching her hot chocolate cup in the crook of her elbow. "Stay close," he said, shaping the words carefully as he signed them. "We are heading out." He took a step. Claire followed. Her knees felt hollow, but the grip on her hand gave her muscles something to answer to. The path between the tables had dissolved into knots of people. Some were laughing, treating it as a minor inconvenience. Others craned their necks trying to see where to go. A stroller blocked part of the way, its wheels jammed against a fallen chair. Evan threaded them through the gaps, shoulders turned, always keeping himself between Claire and the densest crush of bodies. Whenever he hesitated, he lifted his hand again, using quick, simple signs to explain. There he indicated chin flicking toward the corridor. "Exit this way." A teen brushed against Claire's eyes on his phone, not seeing her at all. She flinched back, bumping into a woman with a giant shopping bag. The bag swung, grazed her hip. The woman's lips moved in a frown that might have been an apology or an annoyance. Claire could not tell. Her hand tightened on Evan's. He squeezed back quick and firm. "You are okay," he signed again with his free hand when they paused near a pillar. "Almost out." They moved into the corridor leading toward the main entrance. The ceiling here was lower, the emergency lights closer together. The shadows felt deeper between each pool of red glow. The line of people thickened, bodies packed and shoulders bumping. Air grew warmer, full of breath and scent, heavy with perfume and damp wool. Claire's heart hammered. She tilted her head, trying to see over the people in front of her, but all she got was the back of a man's jacket, the silhouette of a woman's bun. In the dim light, her ability to read lips dropped. Faces were half in shadow, words swallowed by angles and movement. Her thoughts began to spin. If there was an announcement, she would not hear it. If there was a change in directions, she would not know. If someone called her name, she would not respond. Her breath grew shallow again. Evan shifted, stepping a little sideways until she had a clearer line of sight to his face. He signed in front of his chest, keeping his movements compact so they would not hit anyone. "I will listen," he told her with his hands. "I will tell you if something changes." Her shoulders dropped a centimeter. It was not perfect. It did not erase the years of being the last to know, the last to understand, the last to react. But it was something. They rounded a corner, and the crowd thinned just enough to breathe. Ahead, Claire could see the main glass doors of the mall, big rectangles of darkness framed in metal. Snow pressed against the outside, a white blur under the streetlights. A figure in a security uniform stood by the doors, one arm raised, talking rapidly to each group as they approached. His mouth moved fast, eyebrows uptone, clearly urgent. Claire tried to catch the words, but his face turned with each new cluster, never staying long enough in one angle for her to piece anything together. When their turn came, the guard stepped directly into their path. His hand went out, palm facing them, a universal sign to stop. Claire's pulse jumped. Heat prickled the back of her neck. The guard's mouth was moving, the muscles in his jaw tight. His hand gesture widened, taking in all three of them, then sweeping back toward the food court. She saw the shape of the word back and nothing else. Her stomach dropped. Had they done something wrong? Were they not supposed to be using this exit? Was there another problem behind them? Before the panic could fully take root, Evan shifted forward, still keeping his hold on her hand. He spoke to the guard, his mouth moving more quickly now, voice firm. Claire could not follow the exchange, but she watched the guard's expression go from sharp to slightly resigned. Evan dipped his head, one short nod, then signed one word in front of his chest for Claire. "Cold," he indicated. "Just the storm." He says, "Watch your step." The guard stepped aside, waving them through. Evan gave him a brief, grateful look and guided them toward the doors. When the sliding glass panels opened, the world became white and wind. Snow rushed in along the floor, a thin drift already forming by the threshold. The air outside hit Claire's face like a handful of ice, sharp and shocking. She sucked in a breath and actually felt it, the cold clearing the tightness in her lungs more effectively than all the breathing exercises. The parking lot lay ahead, rows of cars transformed into rounded mounds under the thickening snow. Streetlights cast hazy cones of light that seemed to end just above the drifts, the falling flakes blurring everything beyond a few yards. Evan leaned closer and signed near her eyeline so she would not have to look away from her feet. "Stay close," he told her. "It is slippery." Lily shivered at his side, her cheeks red above her scarf. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes, melting into tiny drops that made her blink. "I cannot feel my nose," she announced, exaggerating her words. Claire let out a breath that curled in front of her in a small cloud. She tightened her scarf and pulled her coat closed with her free hand. The snow squeaked faintly under their boots. Even if she could not hear it, she could see the way their steps left dark dents behind. They wove through the rows, Evan squinting at the faint outlines of license plates, until he spotted his car. A silver sedan sat half-buried wipers stiff a crust of ice on the windshield. He released her hand just long enough to dig the keys out of his pocket, then opened the back door for Lily. "Get in, kiddo," he said, speaking and signing at the same time. "Buckle up." Lily scrambled into the back seat, puff of cold air following her. Evan rounded the car and opened the front passenger door for Claire, stepping back slightly so she would not feel crowded. "This is yours," he said, gesturing to the seat. She slid in, carefully gripping the door frame as she maneuvered. The upholstery was worn but clean, a faint smell of coffee and something sugary lingering in the fabric. Her breath rose in small clouds until Evan climbed in behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine answered with a low rumble she could feel through the floor rather than hear. Warm air crept from the vents, slow at first, then stronger. The windshield stayed mostly opaque, the heater fighting the layer of frost. Evan brushed snow from his hair with his fingers and glanced over at her. His hands moved the steering wheel steady under his palms. "The roads might be bad," he signed. "It could take a bit." Claire nodded. She was not in a hurry to return to the empty silence of her apartment. The tightness inside her had eased enough to let a thin, strange feeling slip in. Gratitude, maybe, or simply relief that the night had not ended at that table. In the back seat, Lily leaned forward between the front seats, seatbelt stretched across her chest. "This is like an adventure," Lily said, forming the words clearly. "A snow adventure." Evan snorted softly and gave her a look in the mirror. Then he shifted into gear. They pulled out of the parking space, slowly, tires crunching through the packed snow. The lot was a maze of cautious red taillights and spinning flakes, each car moving as if afraid of the ground beneath it. Once they reached the street, the wind seemed to push out of nowhere. The car rocked faintly. The wipers dragged a path through the snow, coating the glass, only for it to be covered again seconds later. Claire watched the city slide past in blurred outlines. Storefronts with dark windows, a gas station with its sign half obscured, trees laced with ice. Everything looked softer, edges smoothed by white. Inside the car, she could feel the hum of the engine and the shudder of the frame when they hit uneven patches. She kept her hands folded in her lap, fingertips brushing the seams of her gloves, as if confirming they were still there. Lily continued to talk, her voice just movement to Claire, but her expressions big enough to follow. She narrated the snow, the way it piled on the stop signs, the way it stuck to the side mirrors. Evan split his focus between the road and the rearview mirror. His jaw flexed when they came to an intersection covered in slush and ruts, the kind of place where one wrong turn of the wheel could send a car sideways. He eased onto the brake as they approached a light turning yellow. The tires obeyed for a second, then lost purchase. The car slid forward, a slow, sickening glide. The world outside tilted. The streetlights swung across the windshield in an arc of pale orange. The buildings on the side wobbled in her peripheral vision. Claire's hand shot out, bracing against the dashboard. Her other hand gripped the edge of her seat. Her body remembered metal squealing and glass breaking from some old movie, even though it had never happened to her. Evan's hands tightened on the wheel, his knuckles blanched. He turned into the slide, guiding the drift as gently as he could. The car fishtailed front, spinning toward the snowbank at the side of the road. In the back, Lily's eyes went wide. Her mouth formed a silent whoa. The car bumped into the piled snow with a muted thud Claire could feel in her teeth. They rocked once, twice, then came to stillness, half lodged in the drift. For a moment, no one moved. The only thing Claire saw was Evan's breathing. In, out, shoulders rising, falling. He let go of the wheel with one hand and signed near her eye line. "I am sorry," he said. "That was scary." Her heart was still pounding, but the fact that they were not moving, not spinning anymore, seeped into her bones. She released her grip on the dashboard, finger by finger. "You kept us safe," she answered with her own hands. "Thank you." In the back seat, Lily leaned forward again, peering past them at the wall of snow pressed against her window. "Dad," she said, careful with each word, "I think Claire needs a family." Evan's eyes flicked to her in the mirror. "We just met her," he replied, his mouth forming the words slow enough that Claire could read the shape, even if she did not fully register the meaning yet. "She does not have anywhere to go," Lily insisted. "And it is Christmas, and I like her. She is nice." Claire did not catch all of it. The angle of the mirror and the way Lily turned her head made the sentences fragment, but she saw the earnest tilt of the girl's chin, the softness in Evan's expression as he listened. Snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the car, the road, the city beyond. Inside, the air warmed a little more, their breaths fogging the glass. For the first time that night, the silence around Claire did not feel like a closed door. It felt almost like a pause. Evan killed the engine for a moment and listened, not with his ears, but with the parts of his body that had learned to register trouble. The car felt still. The wind rocked it lightly, more a nudge than a shove. They were not in the road. That was something. He turned the key again. The engine caught on the second try. Warm air pushed a little harder from the vents. "I am going to try to back us out," he told Lily and Claire, speaking slowly. Then he signed the gist of it for Claire. "Car stuck. I try?" She nodded, hands still folded tight in her lap. He shifted into reverse and gave the gas a gentle press. The tires spun. Claire felt the vibration under her feet, the useless effort. Snow piled against the windows on her side, white and heavy. Evan tried again, a little more gas, then less. The car rocked, but stayed where it was. "All right," he said, more to himself than anyone. He signed, "I need to push." He pulled his gloves from his pocket, tugging them on as he opened his door. Cold air rushed in, sweeping away the warmth they had managed to build. He stepped out into the thigh-high drift, the snow squeaking and compacting around his boots. For a second, only his shoulders and head were visible above the mound. Lily pressed her face to the glass to watch him. Claire turned in her seat, craning to see past the headrest. Evan trudged around to the front of the car, bent and planted his hands on the hood. Even through the layers of metal and insulation, Claire could feel the dull thud and sway as he pushed. The engine whined again when he had Lily lean forward and turn the key as he had shown her. The tires caught, slipped, then caught again. Little by little, the car wiggled back from the deeper bank. Snow slid off the bumper in clumps. Evan braced his shoulder against the fender and gave one last shove. The car lurched free, rolling backward a few feet onto the packed ridge between the road and the drift. He slapped the hood twice, a signal to Lily. She turned the key all the way off and let go, cheeks pink with concentration, even though the car was already running. When he climbed back in, his hair was dusted with snow and his cheeks were bright red. Meltwater trickled down the side of his neck into his collar. He blew into his hands, rubbed them together, then glanced at Claire. "You good?" he said, forming each word clearly. She nodded. Her eyes lingered on the wet patches on his jacket where snow had soaked in. "You did not have to do that," she signed. His mouth curved. He signed back, "Someone had to." He eased them back onto the road, keeping his speed just above crawling. The rest of the drive took longer than it would have on a dry night. The city outside the windows felt muffled, buildings half erased by the white curtain. By the time they turned into a narrow side street lined with 3-story brick apartment buildings, Claire's fingertips had stopped tingling, and the air inside the car had settled into a comfortable warmth. Lily had grown quieter, her head resting against the seatbelt, eyes still open but slower to track the lights. Evan pulled into a lot behind one of the buildings and parked near a metal stairwell that rose along the wall to the second and third floors. Snow had piled on each step, leaving dark patches where other tenants had already gone up and down. He cut the engine and turned to Claire, signing, "This is us." She unbuckled her seatbelt and pushed the door open. The cold outside bit at any skin not covered, but compared to the open road, it felt contained. The building blocked some of the wind, making the falling snow look almost gentle. They worked together to gather bags. One plastic sack with the thrift store coat and cocoa packets, Claire's leather bag, Lily's small backpack with a stitched unicorn on the back. As they crunched through the snow toward the stairs, Lily slipped a little on an icy patch. Claire's hand shot out without thinking, steadying her by the elbow. "Thank you," Lily said. She made a small sign in front of her chest that might have been an attempt at the same words. Claire smiled and nodded. The metal steps groaned faintly under their weight. Evan went ahead, clearing a path and knocking some of the snow away with his boot. Claire followed, one hand on the railing, the other holding her bag strap. Her breath puffed out in white bursts in front of her. The snow swirling in the space between buildings caught the light from the security lamp, turning the air into a slow storm of golden flakes. On the third-floor landing, Evan dug his keyring from his pocket and unlocked a door with peeling white paint and a brass number that had lost some of its shine. He pushed it open and stepped back, gesturing for them to enter. Warmth met them first, along with a faint mix of smells. Coffee, laundry detergent, something sweet that might have been vanilla or an old candle. Claire stepped inside and stopped just past the doorway, letting her eyes adjust. The apartment was small but not cramped. The living room opened directly from the entrance, a sagging but clean brown couch against one wall, a mismatched armchair angled toward a low-scarred coffee table. A television sat on a thrifted cabinet, its dark screen reflecting the blinking lights of a small artificial tree in the corner. The tree was only half-dressed. A string of colored lights had been wound around it, plugged into an outlet with an orange extension cord. A few ornaments hung on the lower branches, most of them clearly made by small hands out of paper and glitter glue. The top section was bare branches reaching up like open fingers waiting. On the walls, drawings were taped in loose clusters. Crayon suns and stick figure families, a lopsided car, a house with smoke curling from the chimney. A few school certificates hung near the kitchen doorway, printed names and gold stamps. Claire's chest gave a small involuntary ache at the sight. The space was worn, the carpet thin in places, but everything about it felt used in a way that spoke of daily life rather than neglect. "Welcome to our place," Evan said, stepping in behind her. He closed the door quickly to keep the cold out, then shrugged off his jacket and hung it on a hook by the wall. Lily stomped her boots on the mat and then kicked them off, hopping on one foot as she pulled her socks back into place. "Can I show her my room?" Lily asked, the words big and clear. "Later," Evan said gently. "Let us get warm first." He glanced at Claire, his expression turning almost apologetic. "It is not fancy," he said, shaping the words slowly. He lifted his hands, adding small, "Old, but it is home." Claire shook her head, a quick gesture. The idea that he thought he needed to apologize for the lack of polished surfaces made something knot in her throat. She set her bag down near the couch. Without the constant glare of the mall lights and the drone of unseen speakers, the room felt almost quiet even to her. The only movement came from the colored bulbs on the tree and the gentle sway of the paper snowflakes hanging in the window. Lily disappeared down the short hallway and returned with an armful of blankets. One was a faded blue fleece, the other a thick flannel checked in red and black. "This one is the warmest," Lily announced, holding up the flannel. She stepped close to Claire and draped it carefully over her shoulders, smoothing the edges as if tucking in a doll. "You were shaking," before she added, moving her lips slowly. "You need warm." The weight of the blanket settled over Claire, heavier than it looked soft against the back of her neck. Heat flooded in where the chill had sat stubbornly at her collarbones. She caught Lily's gaze and signed, "Thank you." Lily's answering grin crinkled her eyes. Evan moved into the small kitchen area, separated from the living room by a short counter with 2 stools. He filled a pot at the sink and set it on the stove, flipping the burner on. The click and low roar that followed were invisible, but Claire saw the blue flames spring up in a neat circle. He pulled 3 mismatched mugs from a cabinet. One had a chipped handle, another had a faded logo from a local auto shop. The third was bright yellow, with a crooked smiley face. "Hot chocolate," he signed in her direction across the room. "With the good stuff." Lily hopped onto one of the stool's heels, drumming against the bar. Claire let herself sink down onto the couch, wrapping the blanket closer. The fabric smelled faintly of laundry soap and something cinnamon. For a few moments she did nothing but sit and take in the details. The scuff marks on the coffee table where cups had been set down too hard. The small indent in the couch cushion that matched the shape of a child's body. The way a pair of tiny sneakers had been left neatly by the hallway door toes, pointing out as if ready to go. She had grown up in bigger spaces. Houses with formal dining rooms, no one sat in guest towels that were never used, glass cabinets filled with dishes brought out only for company. Everything had been polished and quiet and careful. All this worn-in life pressed close around her. It felt unfamiliar in a way that made it easier to breathe. Evan returned with 2 steaming mugs and set one on the coffee table within her reach. He had chosen the yellow one for her. The smiley face's eyes were a little crooked where the paint had run. He sat in the armchair across from her mug in hand, leaving a comfortable space between them. Not so far that she would have to strain to read his lips, not so near that it felt intrusive. Lily slid off the stool with her own cup and came to sit cross-legged on the rug near the tree cocoa, balanced precariously on her knee. "You can put the blanket on your hands," she said, speaking slowly, "so they do not get cold, for talking." The comment hit Claire with surprising force. It was so matter-of-fact. No apology, no tiptoeing, just a simple acknowledgement that her hands were her voice. She nodded and pulled the edges of the blanket forward, tucking them loosely around her wrists. The heat from the mug seeped into her fingers as she curled them around the ceramic. The first sip burned her tongue, slightly too sweet and too hot, but there was something comforting in the sting. Evan set his mug down for a moment and reached for the notebook he had left on the table. He flipped to a clean page and wrote carefully, then turned it toward her. "You really do not have anywhere else to be tonight." His eyes held no accusation, only a quiet question. Claire rested the mug on her knee and took the pen. "My family was supposed to meet me," she wrote. Then she paused, the point of the pen hovering. "They canceled," she added. "Last minute." She hesitated, then wrote the next part in smaller letters, as if shrinking the words might reduce their weight. Not the first time. Evan read slowly, lips pressing into a thin line at the last sentence. His fingers drummed once on his knee, a small restless movement, before he picked up the pen again. "I am sorry," he wrote. "That hurts in a very particular way." She stared at the phrase. Very particular way. It felt more accurate than the broad, vague reassurances she usually received. At least you have a family. At least you are not alone. She underlined his words with her eyes, then looked up. They think I am fragile, she signed. Broken. She tapped her ear, a small, sharp motion. They do not say it, she added, hands moving slower now, but it is there, in how they look away, in what they do not do. Evan watched her hands, then lifted his own. They did not come, he replied. That is something they did. His face was calm, but there was a tightness in his jaw that had not been there a moment before. Lily glanced up from where she was inspecting an ornament shaped like a lopsided star. Your family is not nice, Lily said plainly, moving her mouth wide. Lily, Evan said softly, the warning in his tone gentle. Lily shrugged one shoulder, unrepentant. They are not, she repeated, careful with the shape of the words, so Claire could see. We came. We are nice. Claire's laugh was small, but genuine, this time a quick flash that softened the muscles around her eyes. She picked up the pen again and wrote under her own sentence. Thank you for being here, she wrote, for noticing. Evan read, then looked at her for a long moment. You are easy to notice, he signed. His hands were not poetic, not smooth, like someone who used this language every day, but the meaning landed with surprising force. Heat crept up the back of her neck. She hid it by lifting her mug again, letting the steam fog the lower part of her face. On the floor, Lily began to unpack a small box of ornaments narrating their origins to Claire, with both voice and overacted expressions. This one is from kindergarten. This one broke and Dad glued it. This one is ugly, but we keep it because Grandma gave it to us. She held each ornament up for Claire to see, waiting for a nod before placing it on the lower branches. The bare part of the tree slowly filled. Evan picked up his cocoa again, cradling it between his palms. The tree lights reflected in the surface of the mug, tiny sparks of red and green. He glanced at Claire, then at the half-full branches behind Lily. If you feel like staying a while, he signed, there are ornaments that need an artist. Her gaze moved from his hands to the tree and back. The blanket around her shoulders felt less like a borrowed shield, and more like something that belonged where it was. She set her mug down, stood and let the flannel fall around her elbows as she crossed the small room. Her hands were warm. I can't help, she said, forming the words, slowly knowing her voice sounded rough to other people, but choosing to use it anyway. Her hands echoed the sentence in the air. Lily beamed and shoved the box toward her. As Claire reached in to lift the next ornament, her fingers brushed the edge of her bag where it rested near the couch. The faint outline of the red envelope pressed against the leather, quiet and unseen for now. She curled her hand around the ornament instead and turned toward the waiting branches, the lights blinking gently in the dim room. The ornament in Claire's hand was a ceramic snowman with one eye slightly higher than the other. Someone had painted a crooked red scarf around its neck, the brushstrokes thick and uneven. She turned it between her fingers, studying it the way she might study a character sketch. Lily made that one, Evan said from the armchair, shaping the words clearly. Age 5. Very serious artist. I was not serious, Lily protested. I just liked the sparkles. Claire smiled and nodded toward the top third of the tree where the branches were bare. She signed, here maybe, to balance. Lily squinted, tilting her head the same way Claire had. Okay, she said. She watched as Claire stepped closer and hooked the little metal loop over a branch, adjusting it once so the snowman faced outward. That looks like the right place, Evan. Evan said. There was something in his tone that made the simple comment feel heavier, but he did not push it. They fell into an easy rhythm. Lily handed ornaments up from the box, announcing each one's story. Claire placed them with an eye for color and weight, spacing the bright reds and silvers so they did not crowd each other. Evan rose from his chair after a few minutes to handle the higher branches, taking direction from Claire's small gestures. A paper bell with a bent corner, a wooden reindeer missing one antler, a clear glass ball filled with glitter that had stuck to the sides over the years. Each piece found a home, and the tree shifted from random accumulation to something more intentional. Wait, Lily said suddenly. She disappeared down the hallway again and returned with a folded paper chain draped over her arms. Red and green loops made from construction paper, each ring stapled to the next. We were going to finish this, she explained, but my hand got tired. Claire accepted one end, feeling the rough texture of the paper, the sharp bump where the staples closed. She passed the other end to Evan. Together they looped the chain around the tree, tucking it between branches and lights. When they stepped back, the effect was simple, but somehow complete. The tree glowed in the dim room, colored bulbs blinking softly behind the layers of handmade effort. The reflection in the window turned into a small, hazy copy of their work hovering over the dark outside. Lily crossed her arms and nodded, satisfied. "It looks like a real Christmas," she declared. Claire lifted her hands. "It looks like a good one," she signed. Lily copied the sign for good fingers a little wrong. Claire reached out and gently corrected them, turning Lily's hand just enough. The girl watched her intently, then tried again slower. "Better," Claire said. Evan watched them with his mug in one hand, leaning on the doorway between the kitchen and living room. The faint tension that had sat in his shoulders since the mall seemed to have eased, replaced by something softer that Claire could not quite name. "Can we play a game now?" Lily asked, turning toward him. "Please." He laughed, a quiet puff of sound that Claire caught only through the shape of his mouth. "What did you have in mind?" he said. Lily spun in place. "Cards. The matching one. So, Claire can play too, because you do not have to talk." She hurried to a drawer under the television and pulled out a worn deck of memory cards. The edges were frayed, some pictures faded, but the backs still matched. She dumped them onto the coffee table, the small rectangles fanning out like a spilled pile of tiles. Evan cleared a space by moving the mugs to the side. Claire folded the blanket around her legs and slid down from the couch to sit on the floor. The carpet was rough under her palms, warm from the heat of the room. Lily flipped each card face down with practiced movements, making an uneven grid. She explained the rules in a series of big, clear words and exaggerated gestures, even though Claire already knew the game. It was easier to let Lily teach it again. One by one, they took turns. Lily went first, turning over a picture of a red apple, and then a blue car. No match. Claire turned over a sun, then a cat. No match. Evan drew a tree, and another tree, raising is into starry numbers, raising his brows in mock surprise at his own luck. They played like that for a while, Lily narrating her guesses with enthusiastic guesses, Evan throwing the occasional game piece of humor into the mix. Claire found herself relaxing attention focused on the small space between them and the upside-down cards. The rest of the night fell away for a bit. When she flipped over a snowflake that she was sure she had seen before and could not quite place, Lily made a small sound and pointed half a second too late. The card Claire chose did not match. "Ah," Evan said lightly, helping after the fact. "Useful." Lily huffed. "I remembered it, just not soon enough." Claire smiled. The warmth of the room, the gentle rhythm of the game, the unfamiliar safety of it all settled into her bones in a way that felt almost alarming. She was used to quiet nights, but not like this. Eventually, the stack of remaining cards grew thin. Lily's pile of matches towered over the rest. "You won," Evan said, again. "I am the champion forever," Lily announced. She stood up and did a small victory dance socks, sliding a little on the carpet. Claire's gaze drifted to her bag by the couch, the edge of the red envelope just visible inside. The game had loosened something in her chest. The thing she had carried all evening, heavy and private, started to feel less like a secret and more like a stone she was tired of holding alone. Her hand moved before she could talk herself out of it. She reached over, pulled the bag closer, and slid the envelope out. The weight of the cardstock was familiar under her fingers. Evan noticed the movement and fell quiet. Lily paused mid-dance. Claire looked at the envelope for a heartbeat, then held it out toward Evan. For a moment, he did not move, as if unsure whether he should reach for it. Then he set his mug aside and took it carefully, like it might contain something fragile. "What is this?" he asked, his lips forming the question slowly. Her fingers shaped the answer in the air. "I was going to give it to my family tonight," she signed, "at dinner." The words felt heavy and small at once. Evan lowered his gaze to the envelope. He slid a finger under the flap and eased it open. Inside, the Christmas card lay on top, folded neatly. He pulled it out and opened it. The hand-lettered greeting on the front was simple. A cluster of trees, snow falling around them, a small figure sitting at the base of one trunk with a book in her hands. The lines were clean, the composition balanced in a way that was not accidental. The inside carried a short message in the same careful script ink, slightly thicker, where the pen had paused on certain letters. He read it, eyes moving a little slower over the line where she had written, "I wanted to share some good news with you." Under the card was the certificate. He unfolded it completely and held it up so the light from the tree and the nearby lamp spilled across the glossy surface. The logo at the top, the official fonts, the printed line of her name. His eyes flicked over the words. Global Children's Illustration Prize, first place. His breath seemed to stop for a beat. He looked back at Claire, brow lifted. "This is real," he asked, articulating each word. She nodded once. Her hands hovered in front of her, then dropped, unsure where to rest. "You won this," he signed, tapping the page. "First." "Yes." He let out a slow exhale, almost a whistle, and ran his thumb along the edge of the certificate. "This is huge," he signed. "You did this." He added, "They did not even show up to hear it." Lily edged closer, trying to see the paper. She looked from the certificate to Claire, then to her father. "What is it?" she asked. "It is an award," Evan said. He shifted the paper so Lily could see the bold letters. "Claire draws pictures, really good pictures. The people who know about these things picked hers as the best. From many people, from different countries." Lily's eyes went wide. She set her hands on her cheeks, fingers splayed. "You are famous," she breathed, forming the words slowly enough that Claire could follow. Claire huffed out a surprised laugh, an uneven sound. She shook her head. "No," she sighed. "Yes," Lily insisted, nodding hard enough that her ponytail bounced. She threw her arms around Claire's shoulders. "You are famous to me." Claire froze for a fraction of a second, then let herself return the hug. Lily was solid and warm, her small arms surprisingly firm where they wrapped around Claire's neck. When Lily pulled back, a smear of cocoa marked the side of Claire's blanket. Neither of them seemed to care. Claire reached for the notebook. Her fingers were steadier than she expected as she wrote. "They did not wait to hear about it," she wrote. "They did not ask why I wanted to meet. They never ask. They have a story in their heads about who I am. It does not include this." She tapped the paper. Evan read, his mouth tightening. His eyes moved slowly over each sentence as if he did not want to miss a word. His pen followed, ink scratching softly. "Some stories are wrong," he wrote. "That does not make them true." He looked up at her again. "They might not see you clearly," he signed. "That does not mean you are not there." The simplicity of it hit harder than anything more elaborate could have. The tree lights blinked on and off in the corner of her vision. For a moment, she saw herself the way they might have looked at her if they had met tonight as planned. Her hair done, her dress chosen with care. Card in hand, hope bright and sharp. She saw the empty chair across from her at the restaurant table instead. She set the pen down before any of that could drag her under again. Lily moved back to the tree, humming something under her breath, and began adjusting ornaments that did not need adjusting. Evan folded the certificate carefully and slipped it back into the envelope, then set it on the coffee table between them, not tucked away but not displayed either, just present. He shifted in his seat and rested his elbows on his knees. "My turn," he said, forming the words clearly. He did not sign this part yet. His face made the meaning easy enough to read. He looked at Lily, then at Claire. "Lily's mom left when she was 2, he said. She wanted a different life, one that did not include this apartment and these bills." He glanced around the room with a small half-smile that held no bitterness. "I could not give her what she thought she needed," he added, "so she went to find it somewhere else." Claire watched his mouth, the way he kept his voice level. He did not rush, did not dress it up. He offered it like a fact he had made peace with, even if the edges still cut sometimes. "People leave," she sighed. He nodded once. "She did," he said, "but Lily stayed, and I stayed. So, we figured it out." He gestured loosely to the room, to the small tree with its patchwork ornaments, to the drawings on the wall. "This is what we built," he said. Claire absorbed that in silence. The idea of someone choosing to leave her was familiar. The idea of someone choosing to stay and to build something anyway felt less so. Lily, done with the ornaments, climbed up onto the couch beside Claire. She tugged the flannel higher over Claire's shoulders and then leaned against her, eyes drooping. "I like what we built," Lily murmured, the words fuzzy with approaching sleep. Claire felt the weight of the child's head against her arm. The pressure was light, but very real. Her own eyes burned with a sudden sting. She blinked it away and shifted just enough so Lily could rest more comfortably. Evan watched them, his mug cradled between his palms, the tree lights reflecting in his eyes. The apartment had settled into a different kind of quiet now. Not the hollow silence of an empty room, but the soft hush of a space holding 3 hearts that had each been cracked in different places and were, for this one night at least, beating in some rough sort of unison. The lights on the tree had gone soft in Claire's vision colors, blending at the edges. Her eyes felt heavy. Lily's weight against her side was warm and solid, a small anchor in the dim room. The girl's head had tipped fully onto Claire's arm, mouth, slightly open breaths, slow and even. Evan had turned off the main ceiling light a while ago. Only the tree and a lamp by the armchair stayed on, wrapping the apartment in a low glow. Outside the window, snow still fell gentler, now the flakes drifting past the glass like slow confetti. Claire's body had begun to unclench in places she had not realized were tight. Her shoulders sat lower, her jaw had stopped aching. The familiar restless buzz that usually followed her into bed was quiet for once. She let her attention drift. The hum of the refrigerator vibrated faintly through the floor under her socked feet. She imagined the sound out of habit, though all she really knew was the slight tremor it sent up through the couch. Somewhere a pipe clicked as heat moved through the building. Her eyelids slid down, not fully closed, just enough for the room to blur. A sharp rattle jerked her fully awake. The sound hit the door hard enough that the frame shivered. Claire did not hear it, but she saw the way the Christmas card taped near the peephole trembled. Lily twitched against her side, startled out of sleep, eyes snapping open. Another knock, firm, rapid. The hollow vibration passed through the wall behind the couch and into Claire's spine. She straightened, heart lurching. Her hand went automatically to Lily's shoulder. The girl pushed herself upright, hair sticking up on one side, blinking into the room with dazed confusion. Evan was already on his feet. He set his empty mug down with a soft clink and moved toward the door, caution in the line of his shoulders. Claire watched his face. The easy lines were gone, replaced by a tighter set to his mouth. He raised a hand toward her palm, out. "It is okay," he signed. "Stay here." More knocks spaced close together. Whoever was outside did not seem inclined to wait. Evan peered through the peephole. His body went very still. For a half second, his hand tightened on the knob. He sighed, a small, resigned movement, then unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. Cold air slipped in around a shape that filled the doorway. The woman standing in the hall was nothing like anyone else in the building. Her coat looked expensive, even half covered in melting snow, the fabric holding its shape instead of clinging. Her hair, a shade darker than Claire's, was twisted into a sleek knot at the nape of her neck, not a strand out of place despite the weather. A leather bag hung from her shoulder, structured and glossy, no scuffs at the corners. Her perfume reached Claire on the edge of the draft, sharp and floral, cutting through the scents of cocoa and laundry soap. "Are you Evan Cole?" she demanded, lips moving in crisp, precise shapes. Claire's stomach dropped. She knew that mouth, those eyes, the small crease that appeared between the brows when things were not as expected. Madison. Her sister did not look at her first. Her attention fixed on Evan, jaw tight. "I have been calling her for an hour," Madison said. "Her phone is off. Do you have any idea what that feels like for a mother, Evan?" The last word came out with a flicker of something like accusation, as if he should understand from personal experience. He did, and she knew it. That was the point. Evan answered, his tone low. Claire caught the shape of his name in hers, nothing more at this angle. Madison's gaze slid past him, finally scanning the room. It landed on Claire, still seated on the couch, with Lily pressed against her side under the flannel blanket. For a heartbeat, her sister's face went blank, as if her brain refused to accept what she was seeing. Claire in a stranger's living room, blanket around her shoulders, a child leaning against her like she belonged. Then a hot, bright flush climbed Madison's neck. "What are you doing here?" Madison's mouth formed the question sharply. Claire rose halfway from the couch, the blanket slipping down her arms. Her hands hovered in front of her, useless for a moment. Her heart thudded high in her throat, blocking any attempt at speech. Lily looked between them, confusion clear in her small frown. She whispered something that Claire could not catch with her eyes, the words too quick, her lips turned away. Evan stepped aside just enough for Madison to cross the threshold, but he did not give her a free path. His presence in the doorway forced her to angle her body to acknowledge that the space was not hers to command. Snowflakes clung to the shoulders of her coat, melting into dark spots. She did not brush them off. Her eyes had narrowed as her attention roved over the apartment. The couch, the tree with its paper chain and crooked ornaments, the chipped mugs on the table, the scuffed floor, each detail seemed to land like a fresh offense. "This is where you brought her," she said, turning back to Evan. Her lips curled on the word "this." Claire saw the judgment land in every line of Madison's mouth. Too small, too cheap, too worn. Evan answered with a small tilt of his head and a hand gesture that looked almost like a shrug. He added words, but his back blocked Claire from reading them clearly. Madison cut him off with a slice of her hand. "She is deaf, not stupid," Madison said, speaking slowly now, as if to a child. Her eyes slid to Claire. "She should not be wandering around with strangers. Do you have any idea what could have happened to you?" The old electricity of being scolded surged through Claire's body. At 12, that tone had made her sit up straighter at the dinner table, cheeks burning. At 16, it had made her swallow words and swallow them again until they felt like rocks in her throat. At 28, it still made her want to disappear. Her hands lifted. "I did not wander," she signed. "They invited me." Madison's gaze tracked the movement of her fingers, but did not bother to interpret. "Of course they did," she said. "There are people out there who look for women like you, vulnerable, alone, ready to believe anything." The words vulnerable and alone cracked in Claire's chest. She had used them herself in her own mind. Hearing them fitted to her by someone else like labels on a file made her skin prickle. Before she could think of a reply, Evan stepped slightly in front of her. Not enough to cut her off, but enough to break the direct line of Madison's stare. "Nothing happened to her," he said. He spoke clearly, and this time he also signed his hands, moving in rough echoes of his own speech. "She is safe. With us." Madison's brows shot up. "With us," she repeated, her gaze flicking to Lily. "So, you have your daughter, and now you collect my sister too." The air in the room seemed to tighten. Lily sank deeper into the couch cushion, closer to Claire's side, her small hand finding the edge of the blanket. "Madison," Claire said, her own voice emerging hoarse. She mouthed the name and signed it in the air. Her sister did not look at her. "Do you know her at all?" Madison asked Evan, ignoring Claire's attempt. "Her medical needs, her history, the fact that she cannot call out if something is wrong, that she cannot hear if someone comes through the door behind her. Do you even understand what that requires from the people around her?" Her tone labeled Claire as a collection of risks instead of a person. Evan's jaw flexed. "I understand that she was sitting alone in a packed mall on Christmas Eve," he said. He shaped the words with care, knowing Claire could see his profile. "I understand that no one came. I understand she looked like she could use company." He signed the last sentence without words. She was alone. We did not want to leave her. Madison laughed once, a short, humorless sound. "And you decided to play hero," she said, forward-thinking, "bringing someone like her back to your apartment, with your child here." The phrase "someone like her" sliced through the air. Lily flinched. "Someone like her is my sister Claire," signed the movements sharper than she meant them to be. She said it out loud too, forcing the word sister past the tightness in her throat. It came out uneven, but it came out. Madison finally looked at her fully. The contact was almost physical. Years of old arguments, half-finished conversations, and swallowed resentments crowded the space between them. "You did not answer your phone," Madison said. "Mom was worried sick. She sent me out to find you while Dad called every hospital." Claire's arms went stiff at her sides. "My phone died," she signed. "The mall lost power." She pushed the words with her hands and her mouth, hoping at least some of it would land. Madison shook her head. "You could have come home," she said. "Instead, you disappear and let us imagine the worst while you sit here and drink hot chocolate with strangers." The way she said home made Claire's chest tighten. The word meant different things to them. For Madison, it was an address and a list of rules. For Claire, tonight, it was a couch with worn cushions and a tree wearing paper chains. Lily shifted again, then slid off the couch. She stepped forward till she stood between Claire and Madison, chin tipped up, small shoulders squared. "You are being mean," she said, each word deliberate. Madison's gaze dropped, surprised, as if she had forgotten the child was there. "This is not your concern," Madison replied. Her tone softened a fraction, but did not change shape. "This is family business." Lily's hands bunched into fists at her sides. "She is my business," Lily said. "She helped with our tree. She is nice. You are not." Evan took a small step toward his daughter, not to pull her back, but to be within reach if she needed it. His eyes held a quiet warning, asking her to be careful, but he did not contradict her. Madison looked around again, as if seeing the room for the first time through some different lens. Her eyes lingered on the drawings taped to the wall, then on the flannel blanket around Claire's shoulders. Her lip curled. "This is all very touching," she said, "but playtime is over." She pinned Claire with her stare. "Get your things," she said. "You are coming home." For a moment, no one moved. The tree blinked quietly in the corner. A strand of blue lights flicked on and off, casting faint color over Madison's sharp features. Her coat still glistened with melting snow. Drops slid from the hem onto the worn carpet, darkening the fibers. Claire felt the old instinct rise in her, the one that made her follow when Madison used that tone. The one that had her packing bags, changing clothes, rearranging plans to make space for someone else's urgency. Her body did a tiny, involuntary shift toward her bag. Evan saw it. He lifted his hand slightly, catching her eye. "Wait," his fingers signed. His mouth stayed still, letting the hands carry the message. She froze, caught between that small, quiet command and her sister's larger, louder one. Madison extended her palm toward Claire, fingers flexing in a gesture that was not an invitation, so much as a summons. "We are done here," she said. "You have had your little adventure, now you come home." Her lips formed the word little in a way that made it feel smaller still. Claire's hands lifted, hovering near her chest. Her throat tried to form words, but her tongue felt thick, her voice unreliable. The memory of that first break in the mall, when she had almost cried in public, flashed through her. She did not want to cry in front of Madison, not again. Evan stepped closer into the space between them, not to block but to soften the line. He spoke and signed at the same time, turning his face enough that Claire could see his mouth. "Maybe we should slow down," he said. "Let her decide." His hands shaped aside with careful precision. Madison's eyes snapped to his hands, then to his face. "You do not get a say in this," she said. "You have known her for what, a few hours?" Her gaze cut to Lily, then back. "You do not know what she needs," she added. "We do." Her voice wrapped the word "we" in a blanket Claire did not recognize. Claire drew in a breath that scraped at the back of her throat. Her fingers tightened in the flannel around her shoulders. The room seemed to tilt slightly, the light from the lamp pushing the shadows closer. Lily came back to her side, slipping her small hand into Claire's without asking. Claire gripped it, grateful for the contact. Evan did not move out of the way. "You are right," he said. "I do not know her whole history." His hands moved, echoing his words. "Not know everything. But I know what I saw tonight," he continued. "I saw her sitting alone. I saw her waiting for people who never came." His mouth was calm. His eyes were not. He turned his hands fully for Claire. "You choose," he signed. "Not her, you." The shape of the words touched something inside her that had gone numb over years of being spoken for. Madison let out a slow breath through her nose. "This is ridiculous," she said. Claire put the blanket down. "Get your things." She took a step closer, heels sinking into the carpet. Up close, Claire could see the tiny freckle near her sister's jaw that had always been there, a point of sameness in a face that had become more and more foreign over time. "You are coming with me," Madison said, each word bit clean. For the first time since Madison had entered, Claire met her gaze head-on. Her own reflection sat tiny in her sister's pupils, wrapped in flannel hair, slightly mussed from Lily's leaning weight. Her hands rose. "No," she signed. It was one word, small in space, but it carried all the weight of the years behind it. Madison blinked as if she had misread the movement. What she said, Claire swallowed. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. She made the sign again, slower. "No," she added, "I do not want to go." Her voice followed, rough but steady. "I do not want to go," she repeated. Madison stared at her, mouth parted. The silence stretched. "You do not know what you are saying," Madison answered finally. "You are upset. You are not thinking clearly." "I am thinking very clearly," Claire said, focusing on forming the words. "I was alone. They saw me. They came." She nodded slightly toward Evan and Lily without taking her eyes off Madison. "They did not have to," she added. "You did not come." Madison's jaw clenched. "We told you there was a family emergency," she said. "You have no idea what the night has been like." Claire's hands moved faster, the words spilling out. "You always have a reason," she signed. "A meeting, a crisis, something more important." She pressed her palm against her chest, fingers spread. "I was important today," she added. "To me." Her hands dropped, as if the weight of that admission had surprised even her. Madison's face flushed deeper. "You are being dramatic," she said. "Standing here in some stranger's apartment that smells like cheap cocoa, pretending this is where you belong." The cocoa was cheap. Claire knew that. She had seen the generic box on the counter. But the warmth in her hands, the way Lily had insisted on keeping her fingers safe for talking, did not feel cheap at all. "This is not your life," Madison said. "You are not staying here." Evan's hands lifted again, his voice quiet. "She is an adult," he said. He made the sign for adult in front of his shoulder. "You do not get to drag her anywhere she does not want to go." His eyes flicked to Claire. "Do you want to leave?" he signed. "Do you want to go with her?" The room seemed to narrow down to the space between his hands and her own, between the question and the answer. Claire held Lily's hand a little tighter. The girl squeezed back, small fingers firm. The thought of walking out into the cold, of climbing into Madison's car, of sitting at their parents' polished table, with her certificate unopened in front of her, rose like a picture in her mind. Her chest constricted at the image. She saw herself in that world, sitting in a chair where her silence was an inconvenience, where her hands were only noticed when they moved wrong, where her success was invisible because it did not fit the story they wanted. Then she looked around this small, worn living room, at the crooked smiley face mug on the table, at the tree dressed in paper and glitter, at Lily's sneakers by the hall, at the envelope on the coffee table, not hidden but acknowledged. Her hands moved slower now, more controlled. "No," she signed. "I do not want to go with you." She lifted her chin a fraction. "I want to stay here." She added, "where I am not an embarrassment." The last word felt sharp on her tongue and her fingertips. It had lived under her skin for so long without being said out loud that giving it shape almost hurt. Madison flinched just enough to see. "Is that what you think?" Madison asked. Her voice dropped in volume, losing some of its hard edge. "That we are embarrassed by you?" Claire gave a small, humorless smile. "You whisper about me," she signed. "You talk around me. You plan things without me. You cancel. She did not list specific dates. She did not have to. They floated between them anyway. You never learn my language, she added quietly. Her hand brushed her chest, then her face, then her hands again, a small circle that meant more than the literal words. You never learned me. For a heartbeat, something cracked in Madison's expression. A flash of something that might have been guilt or memory or the simple acknowledgement of a truth she had worked hard not to see. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes flicked to Lily, who stood like a small, stubborn shadow at Claire's side. To Evan, whose shoulders had gone very still. Fine, Madison said at last. The crack sealed over. Her voice sharpened again. If you want to throw away your family for people you just met, that is your choice. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder movements crisp. But do not come crawling back when this falls apart, she added. Do not expect us to fix it when he realizes how much work it is to keep a deaf girl from getting herself into trouble. Lily stepped forward again before anyone could stop her. She is not trouble, Lily said, every word clear eyes blazing. She is the nicest person I know. Her cheeks were pink, whether from anger or the earlier sleep had not fully faded. Her small body vibrated with the effort of holding her ground. Madison gave her a flat look. You have known her for a few hours, she said. There are things you do not understand yet. I understand enough, Lily replied. I understand you are making her sad. Her simple certainty landed heavier than any speech could have. Evan touched Lily's shoulder, a gentle signal that it was enough. She stepped back, but her gaze did not drop. Madison turned to the door. Her hand shot out to the knob fingers tight. You made your choice, she said over her shoulder, not looking at Claire. Live with it. She yanked the door open. A gust of cold air rushed in, swirling the paper snowflakes hanging near the window. The sudden chill made the tree lights seem warmer by contrast. Then the door slammed. The frame shook. The small Christmas card near the peephole fluttered and settled crooked. Silence pooled in the space she left behind. Not the heavy, lonely silence of an empty mall. A different kind. Wider. Uncertain. Claire's knees felt watery. The flannel blanket slid a little down her arms. Her body, which had been strung tight as wire, suddenly did not know how to hold itself up. Evan moved without hurry, as if any sudden motion might shatter something. He came to her side, hands raised but not touching until she nodded. He set one hand lightly at her elbow, guiding her back to the couch. Lily climbed up on her other side, burrowing under the blanket again, as if to sew back together whatever had torn. You were very brave, Evan said. His lips formed the words slowly. His fingers echoed them. Brave. Claire sat down carefully, feeling the cushions give under her. The room swayed in a small arc, and then steadied. I do not feel brave, she signed, the movements shaky. I feel hollow. Her hands dropped into her lap. Lily slipped both of her small hands into Claire's, wrapping them up palms to palms. You are here, Lily said, tilting her head to catch Claire's eye. With us. The tree lights blinked again, steady and soft, painting their faces in patterns of red and green. Outside the door, footsteps retreated down the hall and faded into the building's quiet. Inside the apartment, 3 sets of hands rested together on a worn couch, holding on while the air settled around the choice that had just been made. The sound of Madison's footsteps faded into nothing that Claire could hear, but the echo of her presence stayed in the room, like a sharp smell. Claire sat very still, hands wrapped in Lily's, the flannel blanket a heavy weight across her lap. Her heart had not quite caught up with what her mouth and her hands had just done. She had said no. She had watched the word land and take root in the space between her and her sister. The shock in Madison's eyes had been brief, but real. The slam of the door had felt like a period at the end of a sentence that had started years ago. The quiet that followed did not rush in all at once. It seeped into the room, slowly filling the corners, smoothing the hard edges Madison had left behind. Lily shifted closer, shoulder pressed against Claire's. Her fingers were small and warm, where they curled around Claire's hands. Do you want water? Lily asked, moving her mouth carefully. The question was so ordinary that it pulled a small, shaky laugh out of Claire. Maybe later, Claire signed. Thank you. Lily nodded, satisfied. She leaned her head against Claire's arm again, as if that single decision had returned the world to its previous state. Children were good at that, Claire thought, jumping from one emotional cliff to another without looking back. Evan stood near the door for a moment longer, eyes fixed on the crooked Christmas card by the peephole. He reached up and straightened it, fingers lingering on the tape. Then he turned the deadbolt with a quiet twist and let his hand rest on the knob for a beat before he stepped away. He crossed the room with slower steps than usual and lowered himself into the armchair. The lines around his mouth were deeper now, a faint weariness settling in. He looked at Claire and signed, "You all right?" It was a simple question, one she had learned to answer automatically with, "I am fine." The old reflex stirred, then faded. She did not feel fine. She shook her head. "I do not know," she signed. Her hands moved again before they could freeze. "I feel like I just jumped," she added, "off something high." Evan's mouth twitched in a way that might have been a smile, though there was nothing light in his eyes. "And you landed," he replied with his hands. "That matters." She let the words sit between them. The room smelled faintly of cooled cocoa and damp wool. Somewhere in the hallway, a toilet flushed and a door clicked shut. The building returned to its usual rhythms, unaware of the small earthquake that had just taken place in one unit. Lily yawned the movement wide enough that her jaw popped. She clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes widening at the sound in her own head. "I am not tired," she announced, then ruined the statement with another yawn. Evan lifted his brows. "Uh-huh," he said. "Bedtime board for elves. I want to stay here," Lily said immediately, clutching the blanket. "With Claire." "You are not sleeping on the couch," Evan told her. "You have an actual bed." Lily frowned, thinking. Then she turned to Claire. "You can sleep here," she said, gesturing to the couch. "It is comfy. I tested it." Claire looked at the collection of cushions and blankets. The idea of going back out into the night to her cold apartment with its unlit tree and one plate waiting on a table made her chest tighten again. She lifted her hands. "If it is not too much," she signed, "I can stay for tonight." Evan shook his head slightly, as if dismissing the idea that her presence could be a burden. "You are welcome," he signed. "Bomb," he signed, "no trouble." He stood and stretched vertebrae shifting under his shirt. Then he disappeared down the hallway and returned with an extra pillow under one arm and a folded comforter balanced on the other. The comforter was patterned with muted stripes, corners frayed. He tossed the pillow to the couch and began spreading the comforter over the cushions, smoothing it with flat palms. The motion was practiced, the kind of thing he had done many nights before, maybe for himself, maybe for guests, maybe for a little girl who could not sleep alone after a bad dream. Lily slid off the couch and watched him work. "See," she said to Claire, "very comfy." Evan shot her a look. "You elf," he said, tapping her nose lightly. "Teeth. Pajamas. Now." She huffed, but there was no real protest in it. She trudged down the hallway, calling something over her shoulder that Claire pieced together as, "Do not start a movie without me." Evan returned to the armchair for a moment and sank down, elbows on his knees, hands dangling. He looked at the certificate still lying on the coffee table and then up at Claire. "You know," he signed, "if you want to stay more than tonight. While you think. That is all right, too." His face was open, no pressure in it, just a line of possibility. Claire's first instinct was to deflect, to say something polite and grateful and non-committal. The words lined up in her mouth and then stopped. She was tired of safe answers. She folded the blanket tighter around her shoulders and let herself imagine it. Waking up in this small living room, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, Lily's footsteps padding down the hall, choosing when or whether to check her phone instead of sitting pinned by it, waiting for it to light up with other people's decisions. Her body gave a small involuntary sigh, like the idea itself made muscles unclench. She did not answer the offer yet. She filed it away in a part of her mind that felt warm. She shaped a different sentence with her hands. "Thank you," she signed, "for tonight, for not sending me away when she came." Evan watched her hands carefully. "I would not do that," he replied. His fingers moved a little slower. "That is not how we work." "We," he had said, "not I." Lily barreled back into the room in purple pajamas, hair, now a wild halo from being pulled through the neck of her shirt. She ran past Evan heading for the bookshelf and grabbed a stuffed reindeer by one slightly detached leg. "Can he sleep out here too?" she asked, holding the toy up. "So Claire does not get lonely." Claire felt a laugh bubble up lighter than the ones earlier. "I would be honored," she signed, giving the reindeer a solemn nod. Lily hugged her quickly, tight and fierce, then allowed Evan to steer her back down the hall. "Say goodnight," he reminded. She twisted in his grip just enough to wave. "Good night," she said, opening her mouth wide. Then she added, "I am glad you stayed." Claire watched until they disappeared into the bedroom. A moment later, a bedside lamp clicked on, casting a soft bar of light onto the hallway floor. Shadows moved back and forth in the gap under the door. Voices drifted distant and blurred, too soft and far for her to even pretend to lip read. She let herself sink down onto the couch, pulling the comforter up. The cushions cradled her body in a shape that felt surprisingly right. Not a perfect fit, but close enough that she could imagine getting used to it. Her eyes landed on her bag again. The edge of the red envelope peeked out. She reached over and slid it fully onto the coffee table where the certificate sat like a quiet fact among the mugs and the notebook. For the first time all day, the sight of it did not make her stomach knot. It was still important. It still hurt that the people she had wanted to tell first were the ones who had walked away. But it also now sat in a room where someone had read it with honest surprise and called it huge without a hint of condescension, where a small girl had declared her famous with sticky hands and bright eyes. The room dimmed as Evan turned off the lamp by the armchair. Only the tree remained lit, casting colored shadows that climbed the walls and drew soft patterns on the ceiling. "Do you need anything else?" he asked from near the doorway. He spoke slowly, and his outline was haloed by the glow from the hallway. Claire shook her head. "I am okay," she signed. He nodded once. "If you cannot sleep," he said, his mouth shaping the words, "knock on my door. Loud." The corners of her mouth lifted. "I can do that," she signed. He smiled back a small, tired curve, and then stepped into the hallway. The bedroom door closed with a soft click. The apartment settled around her. Claire lay back and let her head sink into the pillow. The comforter smelled like detergent and a hint of Evan's cologne. Her fingers traced absent patterns on the fabric circles, loops the beginning of words. The silence came in. It did not press against her. It did not crush. It simply existed, spreading gently through the room. The refrigerator hummed. A pipe knocked somewhere above. Feet thumped faintly in a unit down the hall. She saw the evidence of these sounds in small vibrations in the way a glass on the table shivered for a second. Inside her own head, there was no noise. There had not been for years. Usually that emptiness before sleep filled with old conversations she replayed and revised with imaginary arguments where she finally found the perfect line. Tonight her mind drifted instead to the image of Lily's hands forming the sign for good, improperly then adjusting under Claire's touch, to the way Evan had signed "you choose" and then stepped back to honor the answer, to Madison's face when the word no had finally left Claire's hands. Her body remembered the feel of Evan's grip in the dark maul of Lily's fingers curling around hers in the car, of the soft weight of a flannel blanket placed over her shoulders without being asked. Something inside her loosened. On an exhale, she did not even feel fully until it was gone. She watched the lights of the tree blink in slow cycles. Red, green, yellow, blue. They reflected in the window as a blurred halo haloed by the curtain of snow outside. The world beyond looked softer than she had ever seen it. Her eyes grew heavy, her hands stilled. For years, silence at night had felt like being shut out of something. On this couch in this small apartment, it felt like being wrapped in something instead. She let her lids close. The last thing she saw was the glow of the tree coloring the ceiling above her in fragments of light. Morning arrived as a pale gray light behind the curtains. Claire woke slowly, unsure for a moment where she was. The couch under her back was softer than her own narrow bed, the comforter heavier. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something toasted. A muted clatter drifted from the kitchen vibrations traveling through the floor and the frame of the couch. She opened her eyes. The tree still glowed in the corner, its lights dim against the daylight leaking around the edges of the curtains. Outside the window, the world had turned to a smooth expanse of white. The parking lot, the sidewalk, the roofs across the way, all hidden under a thick layer of snow that softened every shape. She pushed herself up on her elbows, hair falling into her face. The blanket slid down to her waist. Her muscles protested slightly at having slept in a new position, but it was a mild ache, not the sharp stiffness she expected. Lily appeared first, barefoot on the carpet, wearing the same purple pajamas with a cartoon owl on the front. Her hair had exploded into a nest of tangles overnight. She carried something wrapped in crinkled brown paper, the kind that came from grocery bags. She stopped a few steps from the couch and smiled wide and bright. "Merry Christmas," she said, shaping each word carefully. Claire's lips curved in return. "Merry Christmas," she signed back, her fingers moving with a little morning slowness. Lily stepped closer and held out the wrapped object with both hands. "This is for you," she said. "I made it." The package was light. The paper was taped in 3 different places, some edges folded twice, others barely meeting. A piece of red yarn stood in for ribbon, tied in a lopsided bow. Claire accepted it carefully, as if it might break. The paper crackled under her fingers. She glanced up at Lily, who nodded with eager urgency. "Open it," Lily urged. Claire picked at the tape, gently peeling it back. The paper fell away in soft shreds to reveal a pair of knitted gloves in a creamy off-white yarn. The stitches were not perfect. Some rows were tighter than others. One finger was slightly longer than its mate. A few loose ends had been tucked in with more enthusiasm than skill. They were beautiful. She ran her fingertips over the back of one glove, feeling the texture of the yarn. Warmth moved through her chest in a slow, sure wave. Lily watched her face closely, looking for any sign of polite pretending. "I made them in secret," Lily explained. "In my room. Dad helped with the hard parts." Her hands fumbled through a remembered sign as she added, "For you." Claire slid one glove on. It fit snugly, the wool hugging the curve of her hand. The stitches stretched around her knuckles, leaving room for her fingers to move. The other glove followed. Her hands disappeared into the softness, only the tips of her fingers exposed. She flexed her fingers and then lifted her hands between them so Lily could see. "They are perfect," she signed. "Je suis signed." Lily's grin wobbled with relief. She mimicked the sign for perfect and then shook her hands out like she could not contain the extra energy. "I made them," she signed back, a little clumsy, then added aloud, "so your hands do not get cold when you talk." The explanation hit deeper than Claire expected. This was not a generic gift, not something pulled from a shelf at the last minute. This was a small person looking at her, and understanding that her hands were not just hands. They were words. Claire reached out and pulled Lily into a hug, gloves pressing into the soft fabric of the child's pajamas. "Thank you," she signed against Lily's back, the movement small. "Thank you." Lily squeezed her around the middle, then wriggled free and hopped back a step. "Dad made coffee," she said, "and toast that is a little burnt but still good." As if on cue, Evan appeared in the kitchen doorway, one hand wrapped around a mug, the other holding a plate with toast stacked in uneven layers. The toaster sat behind him on the counter, a faint curl of steam rising from its slots. His hair was mussed in a way that said he had run a hand through it instead of a comb. He wore an old t-shirt and sweatpants, both soft from years of washing. "Merry Christmas," he said. He shaped the words slowly. Claire nodded in greeting. Her gloved fingers twitched, wanting to answer in the air. She signed "Merry Christmas" and then reached for the mug he held out to her. This one had a chipped rim and a faded drawing of a snowman. Steam curled up, carrying the smell of coffee and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. "Careful," he said, his mouth forming the warning. She blew over the surface and took a small sip. Heat spread down her throat and into her chest. She exhaled, feeling more awake. Lily perched on the arm of the couch, biting into a piece of toast and gesturing at the window with her free hand. "The snow is so deep," she said. "It is like someone poured sugar all over everything." Claire followed her pointing finger. The analogy fit. The snowbanks along the walkway were piled almost to the height of the parked cars. A few tracks cut through where early risers had ventured out, but most of the white surface remained unbroken. It looked like a world paused waiting. Evan set his own mug down and reached for the notebook on the coffee table. He flipped past pages filled with last night's words and started a fresh one. He wrote for a moment, pen scratching quietly, then turned the notebook toward Claire. "I meant what I said last night," the sentence read. "You can stay here while you figure things out, however long that is." He paused, then added under it, "No rent, no expectations, just space, and us." He lifted his eyes, letting her see the offer was not written lightly. Claire read it twice. Her heartbeat picked up, not with fear this time, but with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Her whole life was in question marks anyway, where her work would take her next, whether her family would ever see her as more than a problem to manage, how long she could keep balancing freelance jobs and bills, and the weight of feeling unwanted in rooms where she was supposed to belong. Here was one answer, not to everything, but to the question of where she might rest while she searched. She set the mug down and picked up the pen. The gloves made her grip feel different, but the letters still formed under her hand. "Are you sure?" she wrote. "I do not want to be a burden." Evan's eyes moved over the word and he shook his head immediately. "You are not," he signed, not even bothering with the pen this time. His fingers shaped each letter of "not" slowly, deliberately. He bent to write more. "Lily and I like having you here," he wrote. "That counts for something." He hesitated, then underlined "counts" once. Lily watched the exchange with open curiosity. "What does it say?" she asked. "It says," Evan said, speaking clearly, "we like having her here, and that she can stay." Lily's face lit up, as if someone had flicked a switch behind her eyes. "Yes," she said, punching the air once in triumph. She turned to Claire. "Please stay. We can make more cocoa. And I can teach you my card tricks. And you can help with my drawing." The list tumbled out, each item carrying the weight of a small promise. Claire felt her mouth tilt. The choice sat in front of her, simple on paper, complicated everywhere else. She thought of Madison's last look, the cold set of her mouth, of her parents sitting in their large house with its 2 quiet rooms, of her own apartment neat and silent and empty. She thought of this room, of the flannel blanket and the crooked mugs and the tree covered in handmade ornaments, of the way her heart had steadied under their roof. She looked at the notebook one more time, then she set the pen down and raised her hands. "I want to stay," she signed. The words felt both huge and easy. Lily let out a small screech of joy and launched herself forward, almost tipping her mug in the process. She flung her arms around Claire's neck, hugging so tight that Claire had to grab the edge of the couch to keep her balance. Evan's shoulders dropped. The tension he had been carrying since he wrote the offer eased away, replaced by something gentler. Relief. Maybe a quiet happiness. "Okay," he said, mouth forming the word carefully. "Then you stay." They did not say for how long. They did not try to map it out. The day stretched ahead of them enough for now. The hours that followed unfolded in a series of small, ordinary moments. They made breakfast together in the small kitchen. Evan scrambled eggs in a scratched pan while Lily put too much jam on the toast. Claire poured juice, careful not to spill. They ate at the little table with their knees almost touching. Afterward, they sat on the floor to open a few presents from under the tree. Most were modest. A pack of colored pencils for Lily, a new screwdriver set for Evan, a sketchbook for Claire, the pages thick and clean. "For your next prize-winning thing," Evan said, his lips shaping the T's. She rolled her eyes and smiled anyway. Later, Lily insisted on showing Claire her room. It was small and cluttered in the way of lived-in spaces. Stuffed animals crowded one corner. Crayons and markers overflowed from a plastic bin. Drawings covered the walls, some taped at child height, others higher where Evan's hands had clearly reached. Claire took in each detail, filing them away the way she did when collecting references for her illustrations. The chipped paint on the windowsill, the way the light fell across the bedspread, the careful uneven letters on a sign that read, "Lily's room, keep out, except Dad." They watched a movie in the afternoon, Lily sandwiched between them on the couch, her attention swinging between the screen and their faces, as she explained the parts she liked best. Claire half watched the story, and half watched them, feeling the shape of the day settle around her like a coat that fit surprisingly well. By evening, the snow outside the window had begun to glow blue in the fading light. The tree lights came back into their own as the room grew darker. Lily dozed off against the cushions, one hand resting on Claire's knee, the other loosely curled around the ear of her stuffed reindeer. Evan turned the volume on the television down, then off entirely. The only glow came from the tree and the reflection of the city lights off the snow. Claire sat back, gloves still on her hands, fingers warm. Her body was tired in a way that felt earned, not drained. She looked at the scene in front of her, a sleeping child breathing evenly, a man sitting quietly at the other end of the couch, his arm resting along the back, close enough that if she leaned a little, their shoulders might touch, the tree between them and the window lights blinking steady. For a long time, she had believed that holiday evenings like this existed somewhere else, on other streets in other homes with other people, for other lives. Now in this modest apartment above a snow-filled lot in Minneapolis, one of those evenings existed around her. She drew in a slow breath and let it out. Something inside her unclenched that had been tight for longer than she could remember. Her hands rested loosely in her lap. The yarn of the gloves brushed the fabric of her borrowed comforter. In her mind, without movement, she formed the signs for a sentence she had heard with someone else's voice the night before. "Come home with us." She looked around the room, at Lily, at Evan, at the tree. The answering thought arose quiet and sure. "I am home." Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.